Welcome back to another episode of Home Built Workshop. Today, I'm going to show you how I made this awesome giant coffee mug display rack. Check it out. I'm going to start out by cutting down some 8-foot lengths of hemlock that I picked up at the big box store. I don't have a lot of space to work with, so working with an 8-foot piece on the saw was a little bit tricky. We got it though. Balance it on top of the bandsaw. Bring that up around, out the door. Oh boy. You know what drives me nuts? Tape measures are all right-handed. When you use it left-handed, it's upside down. Once I got all my pieces cut down to size, then I could apply some tape to the top and lay out all the holes for the pegs. The tape was just there to protect the surface so that I could make some pencil marks on it and not have to worry about marking up the material. Whew! Now I gotta drill a whole lot of holes for these pegs. Before I fire up the drill press though, I want to center punch all the holes to keep my Forstner bit lined up while I'm drilling. And now's a great time to throw on some headphones, crank up some tunes, and drill a whole bunch of holes. I'm utilizing the depth stop on the drill press to make it a little bit easier. So now with all the holes drilled, I'm just going to give everything a light sanding, make sure there's no splintering. One thing about using the masking tape, it helped eliminate some of the splintering. But there's still little burrs on there. I want to sand those off really quick. I am now ready to start putting some of this together. This is where I think it's going to get a little tricky, not because of the difficulty of the project, but because of space. This thing's going to get pretty big pretty fast. I have made up a spacer block with exactly a 2-inch overhang, and that is going to help me get my reveals and my overhangs all in just the right spot. My process will be apply some glue, line it up using my spacer block, then I'll drive in a couple of pin nails just to hold it until I get a clamp in place. Then all I need to do is make sure it's good and square. Or square. Now I'll just repeat that process on all 4 outer corners until I have a square frame all glued and clamped up. I've made up a couple more spacer blocks to help me align the center pieces. The spacing I needed is just a little bit wider than what the boards are, so I made up the extra space using a few layers of masking tape. And this process is very similar. Just apply some glue, use my spacer blocks to keep everything in alignment, and clamp them in place as I work my way up. I'm gonna lie to you, that was tricky and somewhat stressful. I think really it's just because I don't have enough space to really be able to get to all sides. If I was able to clamp some guide boards at 90-degree angles, it would have been super easy to get everything lined up. I'm just gonna let this glue dry now, then I'm gonna glue in the center support. And then we can go back and reinforce those glue joints with a couple of dowels. $14 more to go. It's a lot of dowels to cut off. Probably not necessary for these dowels. I believe that the glue joint would probably be strong enough. But when you say it's probably strong enough, there's a slight bit of doubt in there, and especially since this is going to live in someone else's home, I will take zero chances at building anything that could potentially come apart. Always overbuild, especially if you're building it for somebody else. I mean, you don't want it to come apart in your own house, but you're more likely to take a chance and say, it's fine, it's fine. And most of the time, it's probably gonna be 100% perfectly strong enough. It will never ever hurt to go back through a project, add dowels, add some other screws or something like that in order to reinforce any joints to remove all doubt of anything coming apart. Now let me know in the comments, would you rely only on the glue or would you rather reinforce it with some screws or dowels? After a little bit of final sanding, it's time to get the pegs into place. Now if you've ever installed pegs, you probably know that sometimes they're hard to get them to seat it all the way, so to avoid any difficulties, I'm shortening the tenon on the end of these pegs on my belt grinder. I've made up a small test block just to make sure that I get the right size. I don't want to have any issues when I'm installing these. This 80 grit belt makes super quick work at shortening these tenons. This is taking a bit of time. You can't just douse the glue to it because I don't want to have too much squeeze out to clean up. The last peg. With the glue on the pegs dry, now I'll just drill and countersink for the mounting holes. Let's get some finish on this thing. Shake well before using. One of the advantages of being up before the chickens is you get to apply some finish during the golden hour. You can see the light already on my coat. This should be pretty cool. I made up a bunch of sample pieces for the customer and they ended up deciding on walnut Danish oil. I think it was a great choice. You know what we almost forgot? I recently got this awesome branding iron from budgetbrandings.com. That's cool. And now let's get back to the finishing. It took a fair amount of time to get finish on all the parts. There's a lot of pegs to work around, but with a little bit of patience, it turned out just fine. After the Danish oil has dried, the mug rack has been delivered and installed in its new home. I think this thing looks awesome. Now, if you're interested in building one of these for yourself, I do have a printable drawing available on my website. Keep in mind though that you don't have to build one this big. You can adjust the dimensions in the drawing to suit your needs. Also in the video description, you'll find links to my websites, homebuiltworkshop.com, as well as my handmade guitar website, haleyguitars.com. If you enjoyed this project, I've created some playlists with some other projects you might enjoy, so be sure to check those out. Thanks a lot for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.